Welcome back to Early Childhood Learning Bites. I'm Heidi Mendenhall, guest host for today, and we are back for episode 2 of our language and literacy series. So we're going to talk about something called phonological awareness. Now, some of you may have heard this term. You might have actually heard phonemic awareness, not phonological. And first, I'm going to explain to you what phonological awareness is by talking about what it's not. Phonological awareness is not phonics. Phonics is something that we see and hear a lot of in big box curriculums, and what we think sometimes is the most important about reading, which is the name of the letter and the sound it makes, right? So we hear that a lot, like we see in classrooms a high focus on that's the letter A, it says A, or it says A, right? That's the letter B, it says B. That's phonics. Phonological awareness has nothing to do with the actual letters themselves and everything to do with the sounds. So a tip is we like to say you can actually do phonological awareness with the lights out, right? So phonological awareness is all about playing with sound. So when you are doing rhymes with children, when you are reciting poems with children, when you are singing songs that have familiar rhymes, this is phonological awareness. As we develop phonological awareness, we are developing the skills that enable us later to sound out individual words, to push those words together, and to then understand the sounds all together as a whole, make one word that means something, right? So, how do we support phonological awareness? What does that mean for the 2, 3, 4, and 5-year-olds that you teach in your classroom, in your family childcare, in your home? You have to know where they're going so you can understand how to support them at each developmental phase. And you can do this by watching. You can do this by observing and getting curious about how they play with language. Watch them while they're on the carpet. Are they making the same sound over and over again as they crash the car? Watch them when they're retelling in the library area and they open their favorite book. Are they retelling that end of the sentence that has the rhyme, like brown bear, what do you see? I see something looking at me, right? They might not know the whole thing, but are they saying, what do you see looking at me, right? Are they starting to get that repeat of that rhyme? Or are they playing with words in a different way when they're sitting and waiting for their snack? Are they saying, I want cracker, I want fish, right? Goldfish, an all-time favorite. Everyone always is asking for more goldfish. As you notice how they're playing with sound, it tells you the developmental place they're at. If what they're doing is starting to identify that beginning sound over and over again, they're doing something called isolating sounds, right? And that might be doing it like at the and ish, right? They're starting to isolate that first sound. If what they're doing is repeating that familiar rhyme, right, then they're starting to identify similarities and differences and understanding the similarities between the rhyme words, right? Okay, so what does the continuum look like? It goes like this. First, you just play with sound. You're babbling, you're starting to say some sounds, you might talk really, really loud and really soft, and you might notice differences, right? So it's just playing. Next, you start really cueing into those similarities, right? Really noticing those repeating sounds. Then you start to notice chunks of sound. So that can be in words, like in compound words, where you start noticing that cup, cake go together to make cupcake, right? So those chunks of words. And then you start noticing the onset and rhyme of the word, which means the beginning sound and the end of the sound. So for example, in the word cup, right? So in cup, cake, you would have cup, cake, cupcake. In the word cup, the next thing would be to do onset and rhyme. So the onset would be k, and the rhyme would be p, and you put it together and it's k, up, cup, right? And then the next developmental phase is to look and notice the individual phonemes, right? Remember I said sometimes it's called phonemic awareness? Well, this is why. because the individual sounds of the word are called phonemes. And so the individual words of the sound cup would be k, p, right? I should have done with fingers. I don't have enough fists, right? K, p. Put it together, cup, okay? So on this developmental continuum, down around 1 year, 2 years old, we're starting to play with sounds, notice similarities, notice differences, attune to rhymes, and like notice that rhymes are happening, right? Or similar sounds like alliterations, like those Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, right? That and 2-year-olds are starting to like, that's interesting. That sounds different, or I'm noticing that differently, right? Then mid-year in that, between that 3 and 4-year-old year, you're starting to really clue into things like rhymes. And when they're said over and over again, you start to be able to fill in the blank, right? If it's something familiar, like Jack and Jill went up the hill, right? And they'll be able to start filling that in. That's different though than being able to completely produce a rhyme. To really produce a rhyme, to say, I have the word cat. Who can tell me a word that rhymes with cat, right? When there's no context or nursery rhyme around it. Well, that doesn't happen till closer to 5 years old, when you're really able to isolate the phonemes in cat, k, a, t, and then drop one of those phonemes off, drop the k off, and say, I have the ending at, okay? Now let me roll through all the words I know in my head until I find one that can be similar. Oh yeah, I remember now. There was that thing, bat, right? Or a nonsensical word like, all I can come up with is real words now, like sat or pat, but I know wet, like W-A-T, wet, right? Because that skill of holding on to that first phoneme and then keeping that second piece and then rolling through all the words, you are doing it successfully, whether it is a true word or not. It can be a nonsensical word, right? That rhyming doesn't actually happen until closer to 5 years old though. So what happens in between? What happens in between this, I can tell and fill in the blank rhyme, to I can completely come up with rhymes? And why does it matter? And what do we do to support it? Well, there's some big things we can think about. And one is compound words. Because those big chunks, right? Those big chunks of words, those are the easiest things to work with. And when you think about a classroom or a family childcare setting, we actually have a lot of examples of compound words. So I did cup, cake, cupcake. What else can you think of in your environment that is a compound word? I'm gonna give you a minute to kind of scan through, or maybe you're at nap time and you can scan the classroom right now. What do you notice? Look over at that block area. What do you notice? Look over at that manipulatives area. Are there any buckets of vehicles? Do you have any fire trucks in there? Fire truck. Do you have any dump trucks in there? Dump truck. Right? What else do you notice? Do you have any really cool things in your weather center? Do you have any raindrops? Do you have any rainbows? Do you have a sun that is sunshine? See, there's all these compound words in our environment. So what you do for children is you're supporting their understanding of these things coming together, is that you start to help them separate it. So first thing they can do is put together. Second thing they can do is separate. So just play games with them. Like, what? You're playing with the dump truck. Hey, there's 2 words in that. Dump truck, dump truck. Take away the dump. I'm left with truck. Put back the dump, take away the truck. I'm left with dump, right? And when you start to play these games, they love it. In fact, recently I was in a TK classroom and I was sitting at the lunch table doing this, and we were doing lunchbox, lunchbox, water bottle, right? So there's so many opportunities that are just a natural part of the day to bring attention to these parts of sounds. And then you notice I've been using my hands. You don't have to use your hands. You can actually use your whole body. You could, do things when you're going from like low to big. So sometimes I'll do dump truck, right? So that you're going from little to big and then you're seeing those parts. I naturally gravitate towards dump truck. It's just something that's easy for me. You'll find your natural. Sometimes just like you can use an arm to get even smaller and sound out parts of words, you can do it with compound words too, like dump truck, right? And then it smooths it. Big chunks of words, like compound words, are the easiest, the start. Then also syllables. So we hear that in names, right? A lot of times with a welcome song, you might be clapping, and almost naturally, sometimes we'll clap to the syllable, like Heidi's here today, right? So doing that syllable clapping, well, you can be very intentional about that, and you can say, okay, we're gonna clap the syllables for everybody as we welcome them. Welcome, Josue. Welcome, Addie, right? And so you can clap the parts of those familiar words, and that's bringing attention to those each individual syllables. And then next, once they really can understand how to put together or identify those parts, then you can think about taking them away, right? So it's kind of fun to do that with names because we feel so silly, right? So wait, Heidi's here today. Wait, what if I don't have that first part of your name? What if it's Dee's here today, right? Or if we're doing, let's say, Anthony is here today, right? Funny is here today, right? So when you do that clap, it gives you that space holder and you're saying it in your head, but out loud, you're saying those other parts, right? So that's deleting the sound. And that's pretty difficult, right? And we see that not develop until they really are understanding of putting those big chunks of sounds together. Then we go to the onset in the rhyme, that beginning part of the word and the end of the word. I also want to mention that all of this is really critical that we do with supports. So we do with adult models, we do with the visuals, like I was mentioning, that you scan your environment to find out what kinds of things are in your environment to talk about, because it's a really difficult thing to hold in your head. We call it mental gymnastics, actually. So you need to have that visual, and it's not until after we've practiced a lot with the visual that it becomes something that you can do internally, and hold in your brain. So that onset and rhyme is the beginning part of the word and the end, right? So they move into this like k, at, right? Oh, the first sound is k, the last sound is at. Put it together, k, at, cat, right? And you see again, I naturally use my hands. You can also use your arm for this, k, at, cat, or you can clap it out, k, at. What are the two sounds? K, at. You can hold on your chin, k, at. That one for me, I don't find it very natural, so I don't do that one all that often. If it's natural for you, you can. But the important part is that you're helping to identify that first and last sound. I also just do a lot of sound play with the onset and rhyme. So I'll say things like, I see you guys are playing cats, right? So that I'm just helping to draw attention to that first sound and then saying the whole word. And you can do it in the reverse too. You guys are playing at, right? And so then you're just in a natural way drawing attention to it. This is something that's great to do if you notice that that's the next developmental place your children are heading to and you want to extend them, right? And then the last place, the last phonological awareness developmental phase that they get to is to separate each individual sound, those phonemes, right? And so I mentioned this with cat earlier, k, a, t, right? But each phoneme doesn't necessarily have to do with a single letter. So for example, the word shoe, sh, oo, right? So shoe actually has 4 letters in it, right? Whereas cat has 3 and each letter makes a sound, k, a, t, right? And the word shoe has 2 major sounds, sh, oo, but we know how it's spelled as adults, it's S-H-O-E, right? So that is an example of how the letters and the alphabetic recognition piece is not anything to do with the phonological awareness piece, right? We're just focused on the sounds and how it sounds. This is so empowering because it gives us the gift of knowing we should play with sounds with children. As we're interacting with them, we should be silly in how we use our words. We should repeat things. We should say the same rhymes and the same songs over and over again. And as we are just being silly with language, they are experimenting and they are picking up on those different parts of language and how they go together, how they can take them apart. What's really important is that we focus on this and don't get caught up in making them connect these sounds to the letters right away. So my challenge is to notice, how are your children playing with language? Watch them talk, watch them play, watch them interact, watch them listen to you sing songs and say rhymes, watch them say rhymes to each other. And ask yourself, what do you notice them playing with? What kinds of sounds are they repeating? Are they interested in compound words or rhymes? Are they beginning that first letter and last sound, right? And then think about how you can extend it. How can you play with that with them? How can you extend it that next little bit? There are many resources to support phonological awareness and understanding the developmental continuum, but you guys have just done the first step, bringing awareness to its importance. Now it's your turn to observe it in your children. I'm Heidi Mendenhall. I'm so grateful that you joined us for this early childhood learning bite, and I can't wait to see you next time.